snakes really are neat. This one's pretty warm right now. He's been out there. We probably should have moved that box out of the sun there a little bit sooner. But anyway, like Justin said, it's a member of the king snake family. They're related to the prairies and to the speckled kings. We also have black kings in Illinois, which is a little bit farther to the east. The snakes like this, typically, they eat lizards, other snakes, and mice. So they're really just pretty beneficial to us overall. They're completely harmless. So anybody that wants to touch one, I'll walk around if you feel like it. Snakes have different types of scales. These are king snakes, milk snakes. They have what are called smooth scales. And they're called that for a reason, because they are in fact pretty smooth. Justin alluded to the genus name of Lamprepeltis. A very loose interpretation of that into English is shiny skin. This particular snake actually was given to me by a friend of mine and he had a relative in Missouri. I think he was over in Patton, Missouri, where he found this. But they're found throughout, most of southern part of Missouri and southern Illinois.
It's warm.
Yeah, it's a little bit too warm, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Andy, don't
You're all
you
very
very
docile all the ones that you have. I'm kind of amazed.
Well,
I can see it.
Snakes do have individual traits. I mean, but just like if you're familiar with domestic animals like dogs, I mean, some breeds are known to be somewhat aggressive. Some are known to be really docile. But I'm quite sure that there are some beagles out there that really do think that they're meant to be guard dogs. So
How old is this one?
I don't know, but I would say from the size, since it was an adult when I got it, and I've had it for several years, I would say it's getting close to the 20s. But
So they
probably-
don't get very big.
no, milk snakes. This would actually be considered a rather large milk snake. I'd say, he's over 2 feet. So this is actually on the large size for milk snakes.
Are water snakes, speaking of aggressive, it seems like water snakes are a little more aggressive than
Well,
the average snake, or is that just a myth that I've
almost
got?
every water snake, if you pick it up, will probably try to bite you.
Right.
One of the behavioral differences between our ordinary everyday water snakes and cottonmouth is the cottonmouths don't hurry worth a damn. If you catch one out away from the water, first of all, they don't have the physical ability to move real fast. And they're out away from water. If they're out in the open, if you go down to Snake Road, they'll cross the road. But if you get it cornered, they'll just stop, coil up, and show you their mouth. Water snakes almost always run like a scared rabbit. The quicker they can get away from you, the better they like it. It's not definitive, but it's a general characteristic.
What if you're in the water with the cottonmouth? I've done some survey work where there are cottonmouths
I mean, they're
around.
generally going to swim away.
Yeah.
Another thing, too, to remember is that snakes in general are not, they're not nuclear physicists. They're not that bright.
Right. So you'd have to
And
walk into
the
it
average water
accidentally.
snake really doesn't know the difference between a john boat and a log. I mean, for them, you're out there in a john boat and you're fishing, and the snake's tired of swimming. There are plenty of instances where water snakes have tried to climb aboard because hey, I'm tired of swimming. This is a perfectly good log. Why can't I get up here? And then sometimes people do some very foolish things to evict the snake. Sometimes including sinking their john boat. As Justin had out earlier, this particular animal, I acquired it as a baby. It was originally caught in southeastern Georgia, about 25, 30 miles west of Savannah. I have a friend there that's a professional biologist, and I had the opportunity to go down and tag along when he was doing some indigo snake research, which is a federally threatened species. Or is it endangered? It's definitely on the federal list.
Yeah, they're endangered.
Yeah. Anyway, I went down there, and when I got there, He said, hey, I just found this baby corn snake, and they're common as dirt here, so if you want to take it home with you. So I did, and she ate quite a bit, and now she's not a baby anymore. But anyway, this is, pattern-wise, this is indistinguishable. If you just change the colors, and this is, for all intents and purposes, the same as a Great Plains rat snake. They're similar in size, habits. Just change the color, but keep the pattern. One of the diagnostic things, you'll see kind of a spear point pattern on the top of the head. And at the base of the tail, you'll see two parallel stripes, dark stripes underneath. And the Great Plains is that way too. So like I say, it's a matter of color, not a matter of pattern.
Now in the southeast, what's their habitat? Are they just generalists anywhere, or do they
Well,
have certain kinds of?
This one was probably caught in one of the longleaf pine areas.
Okay.
All the rat snakes can climb pretty darn well. The only one that doesn't climb a lot is the fox snake, which is found in central and northern Illinois. And the fox snake is more of a prairie animal. I'm sure if it's given an opportunity to climb, it'll do just fine. But since they live on prairies, it's not likely you're going to see one up a tree, where these guys will climb readily, both this and the black rat snakes. They have some unique physical characteristics, specialized characteristics for climbing. Most snakes, if you had a cross section, they're round. This snake is more like a loaf of bread. It's flat on the bottom. And where it's flat, if I push like this, you'll see that it creates a notch.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And the black rat snake's that way too. This is one of their keys to their climbing ability. They obviously don't have claws or feet or anything like that. They really don't fly.
Can we see the notch?
Oh, I'm sorry. It creates, when you push back on like this, it'll create a notch there. The belly scales, what we call ventral plates, are stiffer, and it creates a notch in that area. And this snake will simply take that notch, and they'll wedge it into the bark of the trees, and they'll just go straight on up. So it's not magic; it's just good engineering.
Yeah.
How to use the camera.
And we can touch that one too?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all.
I love my
They're all
electric
done.
zoom. It really is helpful.
So soft.
Yeah.
Touch them later?
I've seen black rats.
I got something
White
to
oak.
tell you.
Okay.
When I was at my grandpa's house, I saw a snake and it was black like this big.
Okay. Well, that might have been a rat snake. They're pretty common in this part of the world. Could have been a racer, but the racer probably wouldn't have held still very long.
What did you feed it to get it to grow so much?
Rodents, mice, small baby rats. Actually, I probably overfed her a little bit when she was young, because I wanted to get, when they're babies, these snakes are only about this long. And so, I have to get a bunch of baby mice, and so I gave her as many as I could get. And I think I probably overfed her because she's a little bit obese. She's not supposed to have this wad of fat here. But then a lot of people aren't familiar with that problem too, so it just happens. But she really shouldn't have that there. You can blame me for doing that. Because, those of us that are getting to be high mileage, like myself, I don't look quite the same as I did when I was 25. Well, the snakes, they change too. Not all, but some of them do. And when prairie kings are first hatched, I don't think we got into this. Roughly 2/3 of the world's snakes are egg layers, and about 1/3 have live birth. All the snakes I've shown you so far, these are all egg layers. But water snakes, garter snakes, copperheads, rattlesnakes, they're all live birth. Anyway, when this little girl was first born, she was spotted, and the spots were kind of a reddish brown. And as she got older, the spots faded, and she became more this uniform brown color. And she even has, if you look carefully, you'll see that she has a traces of like 4 dark lengthwise lines. And so this snake is going to look somewhat different depending on what stage of life you find it at. Some individuals, even as adults, will keep their spots. And so if you're looking at a field guide book and you see a picture of a prairie king and it's all spotted, and you look at this one, you say, well, these can't be the same 2 snakes. Well, they are. It's just that, you know, when you do a field guide, it's really hard to get every possible variation that you might come across. So they illustrate with what they think is going to be most common.
Does having them captive versus in the wild determine anything about their color or their look or anything
No,
like
they
that?
just get
No?
fatter
Okay.
in captivity.
Yeah.
They don't have, they're not out really working real hard to get a meal. And yeah,
Okay.
they just get fatter, and they probably, if they're well maintained, they very well may live longer, because maybe that wouldn't have been true 200 years ago when there was more habitat. But with the world the way it is today, I don't think too many wild snakes ever get to die of old age. So, but these are really one of our best friends as far as rodent control is concerned. Somebody did a study, I don't remember the person's name anymore. I think it was done in east central Illinois, and they found that about 70% of this snake's diet was small rodents. So,
Is that like one rodent a day?
no,
One a week?
Snakes are different in this respect from other rodent predators. If you think of other rodent predators, hawks, owls, foxes, they pretty much work year-round, although some birds migrate, you know, but then maybe they get their place taken by a different bird. Snakes are kind of part-time workers because they have to hibernate or ruminate in the winter. So they kind of make up for that, though, because let's say a red-tailed hawk swoops down, grabs a mouse. That's one less mouse. The prairie king snake's out there crawling around on his part-time job, his or hers. This happens to be a her. And they find, they use their sense of smell, which is really good. And they don't just get the one adult mouse, they find the whole nest. And they eat everybody. So when you consider how quickly rodents multiply, they might have 3, 4, 5 litters a year. Well, when she comes along and she wipes out an entire generation, it doesn't seem to matter so much that she's only a part-time worker, you know, because she hasn't just killed one mouse like the hawk or the fox would. She's killed an entire generation, and that prevents, so, you know, they're really pretty efficient. Old age.
Just like people.
Old age. Yeah. Yeah. You know, we get little bumps, and our skin doesn't always look as nice. You'll see that on my big rat snake. He's really up in years. This particular snake, I actually caught in my garage. At the time, I had a small mouse colony. I was raising, you know, domestic lab mice for food. And in the fall, I think she must have just laid eggs because she was really thin. And she was looking for food, and she got in the garage and she got into the mouse colony. And after she filled up on mice that I had to buy, after she filled up on those, she couldn't get out of the mouse colony. She was trapped in there. And it was late in the year, and I thought, you know, if I turn her loose now, she might not make it. Because, you know, you got to have enough fat reserves to get through the winter. And I said, I have enough, you know, prairie kings are always good for school programs and stuff. So I said, well, we'll just keep her. And, well, she's not underweight anymore.
Skink. Looks like a skink in there.
Where do you see the skin?
Oh, that log is laying
Oh,
there.
he's gone.
So now if one of these, well, not this one, but the rat snake were to eat a bird, how does it deal with the bill and all? Does it?
They dissolve it.
They dissolve it.
They
It wouldn't puncture or something. Do they try to swallow it feet first?
The
or-
bill might be a little tough, but claws and feathers are excreted.
Okay.
Another thing too is that reptile digestion, and birds really are kind of specialized reptiles. They're very water efficient. Even snakes that live here, which is not far from being a desert, their digestive process is very water efficient. Everybody's had bird splatter on their cars, and you know what it looks like. Some of it's dark and some of it's white. The white stuff is uric acid. Reptiles convert what we produce as urine, they convert it into uric acid, which is more concentrated. So that's one reason why reptiles do so well in desert areas too, because they don't sweat. They're just very good at water conservation.
They have a temperature range they operate within best too, don't they? Or,
They do, but it's not universal. I mean, some
Okay.
snakes, like whip snakes, coach whips, they tolerate a lot more heat than this girl would. So yeah, their optimum temperature though is oftentimes not too far away from the danger zone. So that's one reason why they relocate. They have to relocate, and I wanted to get that box out of the sun there. Their preferred temperature range usually is, but my prairie kings actually tolerate. This is one of the first of our larger snakes to come out in the spring. I was out hiking with friends earlier this year, and gosh, I don't know, I guess it was probably March, and I've got a picture on my phone here of a prairie king that we found in a field, and she still had dirt on her, mud on her, from where she'd come out of her, she probably hibernated in an old rodent burrow or something. When I take these snakes out, you've seen the stomach part of the snake, the ventral, the bigger plates there. Interestingly enough, a snake has a vertebrae and a pair of ribs for every one of those scales. So now, now of course I'm old and decrepit, and my back doesn't bend worth a darn. But, I and the rest of us, unless you have some kind of abnormality, you only have 5 lumbar vertebrae. And that's what we use for most of our bending and stuff like that. And we got a bunch of thoracics, I think 12 thoracics. But the average snake's got at least 200. And some of them have as many as 400. And there's processes on the vertebrae, the bones in the back, that kind of interlock. So there may not be quite as much flex between 2 individual vertebrae as there might be in our own lumbar vertebrae. But they have so darn many of them. So that allows a snake, like this rat snake, to be really, this snake can stretch out a foot or a couple feet to reach from one branch to another, and their spine is strong enough to do that. But then again, look here, how many vertebrae are we using just to make a simple bend? This snake I caught as an adult is about, maybe half a mile from my house, which is partly farmland, at the time it was there was a little bit more of a woodland. And I think he was about 5 feet long then. And he's over 6 feet now. Probably closer to 7. So I can't tell you exactly how old this snake is. I'm going to tell you he's very likely well into his 20s. So he's probably, he is definitely well past Social Security eligibility.
How much does he weigh? About
7, 8 pounds maybe. I have had one snake. The rat snakes are the second largest snakes native to Illinois. The bull snake is the largest one native to our state. I did have the state record bull snake. I had him for about 20 years before we finally had to euthanize him. He had cancer, which is what really does a lot of our snakes in when they get old. There's probably more.
I can't get my fingers around it. even. Wow.
But you can
Barely.
feel how rough his belly scales are.
Barely get the
He's just,
middle one around.
his scales wouldn't be that rough if he was younger.
Yeah.
He's just, but then my skin didn't used to be like, And of course, remember, he's got they have basically the same body parts that you and I do. There are some things that are a little different. We have paired organs like kidneys, and in the case for reproduction, our gonads are paired organs. Well, with snakes, and they're not paired side by side; they're one behind the other on the paired organs.
Where's the heart on a snake typically? Is
Oh,
it in the middle, close
no,
to the head?
no,
Or?
it's closer. If you try hard enough, you can usually feel the heartbeat.
Huh.
This is roughly about where it's at.
Okay.
The more primitive snakes, like the boas and pythons, have two lungs, one behind the other. More modern snakes like this only have one, but it's elongated and it takes,
And snakes evolved after lizards, right?
yes.
Okay, so they're
As nearly as anybody can determine, snakes evolved from some type of lizard, possibly a burrowing one. I think, I don't think anybody has a totally definitive answer to that. Among the modern lizards, the ones that are probably most closely related to snakes are the monitor lizards.
and then what about glass lizards? So
They're
I've always been wondering. So they're a
lizards.
true lizard.
They
but
are lizards.
But are they trying to evolve into a snake?
I don't think so. I think all it is a matter of
But they can't move the same way, right? I mean,
they're
kinda,
stiffer. They're not nearly as
Okay.
flexible as a snake. They also have movable eyelids.
Okay, and do they have just like little?
I'm
vestigial-
sure snakes stare, but not because they're trying. It's not a stare. I wouldn't get into a stare down because they don't have movable eyelids. And his eyes are kind of milky looking because he's probably got some kind. He's old.
He's got cataracts. Okay.
He's just old.
Do glass lizards have vestigial legs and arms, or are they
No.
completely? I can't
They're
remember.
totally legless.
They're totally legless.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, doesn't the timber rattlesnake get close to that in length? I thought they got awful long for a rattlesnake.
The eastern diamondback is probably the longest of all the rattlesnakes. Western probably be a close second. When I was down in Georgia, I did see a couple of eastern diamondbacks. None of them would be record-setting, but they're definitely bigger than our timbers. Probably the biggest timber I've seen is in the care and collection of Scott Ballard, our state herpetologist. He has a very brightly colored timber. I have no idea when he got it, how he got it. It's really docile, but it is still, still valuable. But I'd say that snake's probably pretty close to 5 feet. So, and there are records. Like I say, I don't think too many snakes get to die of old age anymore.
Yeah.
I think the bull snake that I had, I caught him when he was maybe a month or two old, and he was about 18.5 inches long when I caught him. Bull snakes tend to be born relatively long. The females have relatively few eggs, and so the babies are born fairly good size. Rat snakes have smaller eggs, smaller babies, but they tend to have a few more of them. So it all balances out. Anyway, but the bull snake was, I had my rodent colony was going great guns, and I just fed him everything he would eat, and he ate all through the winter. And a year later, he was 4 feet 10 inches. And 20 years later, when we finally euthanized him at SIU, he was about 7 feet 4 inches.
Oh my God.
So,
Are bull snakes?
a lot of bull.
Yeah. Are bull snakes a state endangered
No,
species in
no,
Illinois?
No, the habitat is shrinking,
Okay.
but what isn't? They like the sand prairies. One of their favorite food items is a pocket gopher. And pocket gophers don't want to have to work any harder for a living than anybody else does. And they like sandy soil because it's easier to dig. And there have been bull snakes found in the past, not too far from here, up near between Belleville and East St. Louis, or Allerton. There have been some there with some sandy soil. Up around Cahokia Mounds State Park, they were found there. Whether they're still being found there, I don't know. The sand areas in Illinois are principally on the east bank of the Illinois and Mississippi River systems, and that's where you find most of the bull snakes.
Do you get scarlet snakes in the sand areas too?
Well,
I know in Missouri's.
in Missouri you might.
we do in the
Missouri you
southern
might,
part,
yeah.
south of Cape
That-
Girardeau. There's
the
regular
scarlet
stuff.
snake's basically a southern snake.
Okay.
So, yes, there aren't any confirmed scarlet snakes in Illinois, but there is an old record that's been controversial for a long time from LaRue Pine Hills, which isn't that far from the sand areas
Yeah.
across the Mississippi, but probably far enough.
What about a little black snake with like a ring around its neck? You know, got
Oh,
6
sure,
inches long.
ringneck snake.
We got
Yeah.
those around here too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a typical glade snake, but I mean, you find them not just glades. There's talus all along the bluffs here, and that talus is oftentimes a favored habitat for the ringnecks. But yeah, you know, there's I don't know about a half a dozen of what some people call micro snakes because they're just little guys. The smallest one being the flat-headed snake Justin talked about, and ringnecks, which are probably the most colorful. I remember somebody asked too about, you know, why the milk snake's so darn bright. I'll throw out, I don't know if this is why, this is one of the theories, is that it's mimicry, that bright colors sometimes indicate something that's dangerous.
Yeah.
And in the southern states, the scarlet king snake has basically the same range as the coral snake. And the sequence of colors is different, but the colors, and so, you know, there is at least some thought. I thought about that because when you mentioned the ringnecks, the ringneck is a dark colored snake with that bright yellow ring around its neck. But when you turn it over, the belly is bright yellow, or sometimes maybe with some black dots. And under the tail, it's usually bright red. And when a ringneck is frightened, one of their defensive behaviors is to simply raise up their tail, coil it up into like a little corkscrew, and show the red color, and then release musk from their musk glands. All snakes have scent glands, and a lot of times when they're frightened or in danger, they'll release that. And I suppose the theory behind that is if something smells and tastes that bad, maybe the rest of the animal's not worth eating either. Anybody got any questions before we head up on the glade? Okay.